Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here to this presentation about how to prevent the next SAP tragedy. A couple of things that I want to clarify before I start with the presentation. First of all, this will not be the typical structured presentation that you often see on the InfoSec. I like it to play a little bit and make it a little bit more experimental. So at the beginning, maybe the structure will not make total sense, but in the end, you will understand why I did it. The second point is that when I was creating this presentation, when I was putting together the pieces that I wanted to show you, it came a moment of self-realization of, oh my goodness, what am I doing? What am I about to show? So you will see at some points that I downgraded the attack or the experience of the attack just because my intention here is to help raise awareness and not make the situation even worse. So no worries if you are part of the blue team. Also, and finally, we will have a lot of live presentations. I have actually 2 live SAP systems running on this machine, so I'm going to show you a couple tricks. Let's all cross our fingers for the demo gods. Okay, so let's start. First, I always show the same. It's a brief disclaimer. Basically, I'm saying that I don't intend to override any original claims that SAP might have with the brands. No one reads it anyway, but it's important to put it there. So, who am I? My name is Jordan Santarcieri, and as many of you that you are here, I started my career as a red teamer, general pen tester, and I started to be curious about these gigantic systems that no one was poking around at that moment called ERP systems, from the most prominent brands, for example, SAP, Oracle, etc. When I have time, I like to present my research and also teach trainings at different security conferences. I have done it on Black Hat, OWASP, EcoParty, and I did it last year for Insomni'hack. And I don't know what happened, but these guys were crazy enough to call me again and allow me to speak again. So I'm more than grateful for that. So I have a lot of experience with SAP systems. I started in 2008. Researching, reverse engineering, doing exploit writing, even for commercial solutions out there. And I had the pleasure to work with more than 1,000 SAP systems, attacking, defending, fixing. I did it for everyone, like big companies, Fortune 500, military institutions, and ONGs. This is the brief agenda that I have prepared for you. Just a fair warning. The complexity will start low and then will increase a lot, especially in the end. So pay attention. Chapter 1, we're going to start, as I always like to do, with a brief introduction to SAP, because I know that some of you here might not know a lot about SAP. So I want us, all of us, to be at the same level so everyone is able to understand the attacks that I'm going to describe later on. On chapter 2, I'm going to show you and I'm going to tell you what is the project ARSAP and how it was born. It's an interesting research that I think you will all be interested in. Who's going to tell you the story and the end result of that. And then we're going to start to get even more technical on the chapter 3. We're going to see the traditional approach to malware distribution on SAP, and this is based on a true story. Of course, I always going to say this, I will not give you the name of the company that was affected, but for you to understand that this was a true attack. And finally, this is where we're going to be very technical. We're going to learn about ransomware and the weaponization of the weaknesses. Okay, ready? Let's start with a really brief introduction to SAP. So many of you, maybe you decide to stay from the other talk, or maybe you just feel curious. You might be wondering, okay, what is SAP? Well, SAP is an acronym, and it stands for Systems, Applications, and Products in Data Processing. It's a German company that was founded in 1972, and I don't know if you know the history, but it was founded by ex-IBM employees. Those guys were working on an ERP for IBM. Don't ask me why or what happened there. The project got canceled, and those guys say, okay, wait a second. We have something good between our hands. Why don't we just split up and create our own company and make our own product? That was one of the most successful business decisions on the history of software. Look at these numbers. They have more than 88,000 employees. Even though if you have been following the news for the last 2-3 weeks, there have been a lot of layoffs in SAP, but SAP says that by the end of the year, they will even increment the workforce that they have nowadays for 5,000 people. They're incorporating 5,000 people. They have more than 378,000 customers. They're almost on every single country that has in the world. And I think the last detail is the most powerful market. You know that the Forbes Global 2000 are the most powerful companies and institutions out there. And when I say powerful, I say from the point of the revenue, the money. 87% of those companies are running SAP to run the daily day operations, business critical applications, processing credit cards, materials, etc. Again, for this really brief introduction, if you read the SAP documentation, will be different, but for this really brief introduction, we're going to separate the solutions available in two: enterprise solutions and the supporting solutions. The enterprise solutions are the ones that the human beings, the people in your organization, will be connecting to work all the time. I know that the names are a little bit confusing, and you might be even more confused with all the marketing revamps that SAP suffers all the time. But just for you to understand, if you only have one SAP system in your company, you have the ERP. It's the heart. It's where a lot of important things are going on. Credit cards, HR information, very, very sensitive information. All is stored on the ERP system. BI system is a very powerful system. This is how companies learn how to serve more and better. An example that I always like to do, I was working with a car manufacturer company. We were doing a pen test over the BI systems, and we were able to compromise the system and get the quarter information before the quarter ended. If an attacker does that, that person could have made millions on the stock trade. CRM, for example, will reflect all the customer interactions with the company and so on. All these enterprise solutions, and we're going to see what it means because it's very important to understand the attacks later. All these enterprise solutions are NetWeaver based. Just remember that. And from the other side, we have the supporting solutions, our technical solutions that will be providing support to the enterprise solutions. Most of them, with the exception of the GRC, are not NetWeaver based. And most of them will only receive technical users. Okay, so what is this NetWeaver that I keep mentioning? Well, NetWeaver, for you to visualize it easily, is the framework where SAP is built in. Inside NetWeaver, that by the way is service-oriented, we're going to see what that means on the next slide, we have two main divisions as well. We have the ABAP stack and the Java stack. The ABAP stack, to make it simple, is where the money is. There we go. You will never forget that. And the Java stack, it was designed to be more internet-facing for extranets, for creating portals for your providers, etc. But it's slowly being sunsetting by SAP. And when I'm going to show you some numbers in a couple of slides, you will see that that tendency is getting confirmed. So what you see here, down here, is like the structure of the SAP system. The SAP application level is where the NetWeaver sits in, and at the same point, the NetWeaver will regulate how SAP will interact, how it's going to be speaking with the operating system, and at the same time, the SAP NetWeaver will regulate how it's going to connect and interact with the SAP database. All the systems that are NetWeaver-based share this same infrastructure. So from the attacker point of view, this is really good, because it means that if you find a vulnerability for the SAP ERP, you have 3 out of 4 chances that that same vulnerability will be applicable for your BI system, for your CRM system, and from all the systems that are NetWeaver-based. Good for attackers, not that good for the blue teamers that had to triplicate the effort. This is more or less how the inside of an SAP system, of a dual stack system, systems that contain the services of ABAP and the services of Java, looks like. You can see that they even have 2 different schemas inside the SAP database. Something that I'm going to show you, and we're going to see a lot on this presentation, is that SAP, most of the protocols that are out there are proprietary. They do have some standard protocols. For most of them, the most important ones are proprietary. Some of them are plain text, some of them are not. Some of them support authentication. Some of them, the authentication is not even built in the protocol. So how people connect and work with the SAP system? Well, there are many ways, and depending on the services and what is your end goal. The most common way, if you're in the adjacent network, is what you see at your right side, is the SAP GUI. The SAP GUI is an extra thick client representing the old client-server architecture. It is more than 1.4 gigabytes when you extract the client, so it's not a lightweight application. And from the other side, and for what we're going to be working for most of this presentation, are the SAP web application servers. These are the ones that you will normally find exposed to the internet. For this presentation, we're going to work with the ICM, that is the web application server for ABAP, remember where the money is, and from the Java side, with a very cool name called SAP Java HTTP. I made the mention of an evolution of the ICM. Maybe you have heard about something called XS. This is the evolution of the ICM that SAP has implemented in HANA. But in the end, the main structure is exactly the same to the ICM. So if you haven't figured it by now, and you might be wondering why someone might like to attack your SAP implementation, as I said before, 2 times, 3 right now, is where the money is. People know that if you have an SAP, you most likely will be processing cards, you most likely will be managing bank accounts, IBANs, everything will be there. They know that also the organization highly depends on it. If you have a production line, it's very common to have that tied together to your SAP system. And finally, maybe they just don't like you. So let's see what is this project ARSAP that I keep mentioning about. And this is where the structure of the talk is a little bit different. Why I'm introducing myself again. I work for Vicxer. Vicxer is a company that I helped founded that specializes on pen testing SAP, pen testing Oracle. We do a lot of vulnerability assessments and, unfortunately, a lot of forensics as well. We are a relatively young company, and as a relatively young company, we have the same challenges that most of people have. Okay, how we make money? We were exploiters, we were exploit writers, we were reversers, but none of us was a salesperson. It's a total different beast. So we started to ask our friends, the so-called VDR, Business Development Representative. Back in Argentina, in the neighborhood where I come from, we just call it telemarketers, but it's a fancy name. Everybody call it VDR by now. So we say, okay, so how you guys approach potential new customers? They say, well, we just buy a sketchy list from the internet that says who owns an SAP system, and we just do cold calling. Basically, we pick up the phone, we annoy the people until we can make a sale. Interesting. So what is the success rate that you guys have for that? They say, well, just about the 1%. 1%, we did the connection with the spammers. It's exactly the same success rate that the spammers get, 1%. I don't know if it is a coincidence. I don't think so. But we say to ourselves, come on, I mean, we are hackers. We have a lot of skills. We love to code. There must be a better way, a more intelligent way to do this. And that is when this project ARSAP is born. Basically, we leverage the content on all the different search engines. We try to get as many data sources as possible. We use Shodan. We use Google, Dorks, Bing. We use the Chinese version of Shodan, Sumai, that actually I love it. If you have the possibility to give it a look, it's very, very good. And we also use more sketchy resources. Like on the deep web, we start leveraging some search engines there and some private forums that we have access to, which are even more sketchy. Our objective was to leverage and to discover as many SAP systems as possible that they were already exposed to the internet. Any type of SAP system, ABAP, Java, Business Object, HANA, whatever we could get. We ended up coding an extractor, a plugin that was constantly connecting to those sites and pulling the information and doing the diff with information that we already had. Why? Because we knew since the very beginning that the map that we would get from the SAP systems will be alive. And it was even more common than we expecting. Surprisingly enough, SAP systems are going up and down from the internet very quickly. And then we started to analyze why. And to our surprise and to realization, even though we suspected that would be that way, people are not just putting the production systems on the internet, but it's very, very common as well to find development SAP systems and QA SAP systems. That is terrible, because remember that all the SAP systems are interconnected, and in general, the security policy implemented in dev is much more lax than the security policy that is implemented in production. It should not be that way, but it is. So, okay, we had this line map, and we ended up with a lot of information. Just a bulk of information is worthless. We needed a way to be smart, to start classifying things. Lucky for us, and these search engines already captured that, SAP, especially in the headers, is quite verbose. And I have included some real examples here. Look at this. There is no possible confusion that you are dealing with an SAP system. SAP NetWeaver Application Server 7.21/SAP Java 7.31. You get what type of SAP system is, and you also get the version. This came very handy. So we started to put it together some intelligence around that. We knew what SAP systems were exposed. We knew what services, what protocols were being exposed. We knew the country and the continent that was hosting that SAP system. I want to put a caveat here. Sometimes we face an interesting situation because the host country that is hosting that SAP system not necessarily is the same country as the owner. For example, there are a lot of SAP systems being hosted in Amazon, Singapore, and not necessarily the owner is a Singaporean company. So once we got the systems, we also start to going a little bit ahead. Those systems that are being exposed support encryption. Surprisingly enough, a lot of SAP systems that are exposed to the internet, the certificates are self-signed or they are deprecated or using an insecure algorithm. And finally, we got the versions. We went a little bit further than that, applying some techniques, always without touching the SAP system, but doing whois or just taking a look at the certificates. We were able to identify who was the owner of those SAP systems. As I always like to joke, there is no such a thing as a Rolls-Royce being orphan. Here is exactly the same. There is no orphan SAP system. SAP system costs a lot of money, so someone must be behind those. And finally, as we had the version, we compared the version against public disclosed vulnerabilities at our own internal vulnerability database, so we were able to prioritize what SAP systems were on more risk. Are you intrigued by the results? We found in total 14,000 SAP services directly exposed there. This is without a WAF and without a web dispatcher and without any type of filtering. The vast majority of them were ABAP systems, like 8,000, a little bit more than 8,000. And then on the second place, it came to Java. This makes sense and corroborates what we are seeing in the market and by the SAP strategy of slowly sunsetting the Java part. More scary numbers. We were able to identify almost 40% of the owners of all those SAP systems that were there. And the most scary one, rough and tough, 27% of those SAP systems had critical vulnerabilities or high vulnerabilities. I'm talking about like remote command executions, file read, file uploads. Some of the systems, it was like a one exploit totally pound, or some others you had to work a little bit further, something that we're going to do very soon. And we actually ended up being highly surprised by this number. We were expecting the number to be around 10%. Immediately we have like a a bad feeling here in our chest saying like, oh, if someone skilled enough will start playing with this, definitely it will be the next SAP tragedy. And we wanted to help. How, you say? Well, keep watching. I'm getting advanced here because I know that is the question that you will ask. I will ask the question the same. Yes, we're going to release the information with an open license, so everyone will be able to benefit from the number and or research. What we're not going to include are the URLs, because we don't want people to start attacking, and also the name of the companies. But the information is going to be released and it's going to be public. We haven't defined yet how we're going to structure that information, if it's going to be like a PDF, more like a scientific paper, or if it's going to be something like with Tableau when you can point and click and it's more interactive and nice, but we don't know yet. What we know is that it's going to come Q3, Q4 this year. Okay, so we need to start thinking like an attacker. The first scenario that I'm going to show you is the same, the one that I told you before that is based on a true story. And this is one of the scenarios that I ended up downgrading the attack a little bit more. And you're going to see why. If you are an attacker, you already know what company is running the SAP system, and you know the SAP system that is exposed to the internet. It will be trivial for you to start enumerating and identifying the people that is working on that company, right? You can go to Have I Been Found, you can go to LinkedIn, you can even start researching that on Google. You can end up with a lot of emails after that. You know that the organization, if it is using SAP, probably is using SAP across the board. Is the core definition of an ERP system. It's a software that is supposed to give solutions to each one of the divisions of your company. And finally, you know if that company is acquiring SAP system, probably has a lot of resources. And if it has a lot of resources, they will have a significant headcount. If companies have a significant headcount, it's very common for them to implement something that is called single sign-on. When people don't have to remember multiple passwords for everything, they just remember one password, and when they do double click on the SAP client will just pop up and it will be already logged in. We're going to combine that, and this is what the original attacker did, with something that is called SAP GUI scripts. Basically, these scripts are creating for doing automatic testing or automatic procedures on the SAP system. By default, these SAP GUI scripts come disabled. But most companies, 90% by our experience, activate this functionality because it's extremely common. Even the most high-end products use this functionality for stress testing and even functional testing as well. I included a picture for you of more or less how a SAP GUI script looks like, similar to a Visual Basic script. So what is going to happen here and how we're going to proceed, this is exactly the same how this case went through. We're going to send a malicious file by email with the SAP GUI script attached to it, and the victim will only have to do a double click to perform malicious action on the SAP system. You could do whatever you want here. As just a silly example, what I chose to do is to delete the content of a table that is supposed to contain public debt. The tag will go like this. This is the part that I had to downgrade a little bit the experience. I'm going to show you the SAP GUI script as a Visual Basic script. And you can tell me, well, Jordan, nowadays any anti-malware or any email filtering capabilities will stop that. Yes. And there is also a way using SAP technology to completely make that undetected. But it will be too heavy to release that on the presentation. After the presentation, if you have questions, come to me and I will give you a hint of how you can do it. But for this presentation that also is going to be recorded, we're going to keep it safe. Again, the purpose here is to help people, not to make it worse. Plus, I don't want to get sued, so it is what it is. Going to show you. First, SAP GUI. This is the client that we were talking about yesterday, a few moments ago. This is transaction SE11, and from here, I'm going to show you that there is a table that is public debt, where I'm going to show you the content. There we go. Kudos if you can identify the name. You're almost as old as me. As you can see, there are amounts, there are different values, there are different people that they owe money. Look at this. Look what happens if someone double-clicks, receives that malicious action, and double-clicks on it. I need to make it very visible because it's going to be really fast. Okay? Go. That's it, automatically. And this works even if the SAP GUI is minimized. So what's happening here? Let's go to transaction SC11 and let me show you what's happening with the content of the table. Again, this is the most silly example. It's completely empty. Why? Why this is happening? Well, it's a valid use case. It's a valid use case, and you could disable the execution of the SAP GUI scripting if you want. You just need to modify a profile parameter called SAP GUI/user_scripting. You need to set that in false. And unfortunately, as many things in SAP, you need to restore the SAP system. Can you take the luxury of doing so? Most likely no. Most companies highly depend on this functionality to happen. So what you can do about it? Well, if you're in a new version of SAP system, 720 onwards, there is a workaround. If you are below that version, unfortunately, sorry, you are stuck with this. You keep the SAP GUI scripting enabled, and you modify the profile parameter script/user_scripting_per_per user, you put it in true. And from that moment, only the users that have the authorization S_SCR on 16 will be able to execute this. And also, something that people disable a lot is the notification when the SAP GUI is going to be activated. And the problem is that when you disable this at your end customers, at all of your workstations, most organizations disable it globally through group policies. So it's not just for one guy. They disable it across the board. So when you do a double click on the SAP GUI, you have no warning whatsoever. What you need to do is see here where it says notify when a script attaches to the SAP GUI. That must be enabled. At least when the user, the victim, will do a double click, it will appear a pop-up that says, hey, a SAP GUI is trying to use your SAP client. Are you sure about that? At least you get a pop-up. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit more complex. The weaponization and the prevention of how you can avoid being exploited directly from the internet. When we started analyzing all this, we repeated in our heads, man, if a ransomware is going to be created, if a worm is going to be created, these results could be really catastrophic. We wanted to help, but before we could help, we needed to start putting into our heads how an attacker will try to get in and break inside your SAP system. How that person will try to massively compromise all the systems that they were exposed to the internet. For that, we started doing some history lessons, and we started to analyze and learn how past ransomwares used to work. We discovered that some of them will share personality traits that I had put it there for you. First of all, they were designed to hit you and hit you hard. Lateral movement was called. That was the end objective. Keep compromising and compromising and compromising. The more, the better. And because of that, avoiding making noise was not a priority per se. Finally, they were open to weaponize some previously reported vulnerabilities. Most of these, you can call it state actors, you can call it criminal organizations, they already have a framework for the whole malware and for the whole workflow. You can call it kind of like a gun, and they just need the exploit, that bullet, to put it there. They're just waiting for that bullet. This is going to be our attack scenario, and it's actually a very, very common one on how most implementations of SAPs that are exposed to the internet looks like. We are going to be working with a Java system that is going to be on the DMC. We're going to be working with an ABAP system that is also on the DMC. And we are going to try to jump to all the systems that are in the internal network or the adjacent network. how we're going to do it, or what is the approach or the phases that we're going to do it? Well, I have divided it in 5 different phases. It's going to be the intrusion. This is the most important part for an attacker point of view, like setting foot inside one of the systems on the DMC. We're going to do that utilizing an exploit. We're going to do some credential gathering. This is one of the most important parts. Once the exploit hits you, we're going to see what level of privileges do we have and how we can reutilize those privileges to get even more credentials and what type of credentials. Once we have that, we're going to do lateral movement from the Java system that I show you here. We're going to try to compromise the ABAP system. And finally, we're going to try to jump from the DMC. If you are an attacker, or even if you are like a functional implementator or a network designer, you most likely always allow connections from the ABAP system on the DMC to the adjacent network. Why? Because you need to pull information that other systems are processing or are storing. It's always very, very common. So what it means? It means that you already have a firewall exception from that system on the DMC to the adjacent network. And finally, and kind of like a bonus, a part of attacking the systems on the DMC, on the adjacent network, we're going to attack the customers that are working with the SAP systems on the adjacent network. Again, there are many techniques to achieve this. I'm going to show you something that makes sense, that is powerful, but something that will be trickier for someone bad to do something even more bad. I'm going to show you the technical attacks, and I'm going to show you the countermeasure of that. Of course, the end worm, it will not be distributed for obvious reasons, but I will show you pieces of code to exemplify the attacks and the credential harvesting. Okay? So, as I mentioned before, malwares like the author of WannaCry and many others, they already have the framework. They just need the ability or the exploit to come up to the light, an exploit that is relatively new, and they just need the vulnerable victims. This attacker already harvested all the SAP systems that are on the internet, and he or she already knows an exploit, and we're going to see what the exploit is. But on network diagram, the first victim, the first system where we're going to set foot will be that Java front-end system on the DMC, of course. The exploit that we're going to utilize will allow us to execute operating system commands under the privileges of the operating system user that holds the entire SAP application. If you get that level of access, you can shut down the SAP system, you can corrupt the kernel, you can execute queries without knowing the database password by abusing of the trust relationship that those users will always have with the database. So pretty much when we get to that point, it will be game over. This is a relatively not so new exploit, we can say, but hey, we knew already all the systems that we had, and we knew already all the version of those systems that we have, and almost 3 out of 10 Java systems that we have in our list were vulnerable to this attack. Again, this is in theory, because we never actually attacked any of those SAP systems that were on the internet. Okay, so let me show you the first exploit. And I forgot to open my IDE. Please hold. This is where we need like the waiting music kind of stuff. There we go. Almost there. I had divided this worm and this exploit on 3 different phases. At the very end of the presentation, I'm just going to run the one that does everything automatic, and you will see the total flow execution. To be honest, it will be that fast that it will be a little bit tricky to catch once we finish with the execution, but at least you will be seeing that it's totally possible to create like a complete worm. Okay? Okay, so look at my screen. Oof. This is like the third loading. There we go. This is for the end. See, the 3 different phases. Later on, I'm going to show you the whole thing. But for the main phase, we're going to execute operating system commands. Upstairs, here, you can see the payload. This one I'm going to show you because it's well known, it's public. That is the URL that we're going to be using to execute operating system commands. And at the very end are the commands that we're going to be executing. You will be able to see like a who am I, the current working path, and the privileges of the user running the SAP system. Let me quickly show you. It's a sub-service. This is a service user. That is the working path. And if you scroll down with me on this particular SAP system, sub-service is not just part of the local SAP administrator group. It could be local or part of the domain. It also is part of the administrator group on the local OS version. Totally pound. If we got this level of privileges, we can do whatever we want. So, but the malware needs to be smart, right? Command execution, as it is not that important. Remember that if someone is attacking an SAP system, most likely is trying to disrupt your business or going for the money, basically. So before we continue, how you can close the gap this? Well, you need to apply 3 different patches, 3 different what is called SAP nodes, that unfortunately you can only consume if you are an SAP customer. Those are the number on the top left corner. A part of applying those nodes, and depending on the version of the SAP system that you have, you need to switch this invoker servlet functionality to false. For that, you need to go to what is called the Java config tool inside the SAP system, or an easier way, you go to the NetWeaver administrator page from your browser, server configurations, servlet, and you disable the invoker servlet. Be very careful if you have a relatively old version and not so new version. You have to apply the latest node 146.7771 before disabling the invoker servlet. Why? Because SAP used to heavily use this functionality, not just to install itself, if not to do administrative tasks. If you disable the invoker servlet without applying that node, no one else will be able to log into the SAP portal. Finally, you need to restart the SAP system for the changes to take effect. This is how you fix it. This is the most important part from the blue teamers, because once we are there in the DMC, it's just a matter of time, as we're going to see. Now we need to do lateral movement, right? I don't know if you remember, we're on the DMC, we compromise everything on the Java side. We're going to, just because we're greedy, we're going to try to tackle the other ABAP system on the DMC. Perfect. So what we can do here? First, what you could do that is more suitable for an interactive attacker and not for a worm is you go to the database, you get the hashes, you crack the hashes, and you try to utilize those hashes. That would take too much. So what else we can do? In Java, there is a storing mechanism that is called the SAP Security Storage. The SAP Security Storage is just like an encrypted file at the file system, encrypted with triple S, with a hard-coded key, that the hard-coded key was in the application itself that used to administer the security storage, and a key phrase that the user specifies at the installation time. What can we find on that security storage? Well, we can find the database password, the full JDBC connection chain to the database, meaning that we will have the schema, the database user, and the database password that SAP uses. And depending on the version, we are going to also find the SAP user, the administrator user password as well. Most of the time, and we're going to see later why this is happening, the passwords are the same because they are master passwords. We're going to see what that means very, very shortly. So if the container can be decrypted, which is extremely silly to do, I have this utility since 2018 or 12, and I think recently it has been made public. So let me show you how you do it. First, I'm going to show you the container itself. The end malware, as I have it coded, what it's going to do is it's going to bring these files and it's going to do the decryption. But for you to see, as it's going to be too fast, I'm just going to show you how it looks like. There are 2 files that we're going to be working with. The first one is the sextor.properties. This is the file that will contain the encrypted information. This is a plain text file. Great. The other file is the key file. Remember that I told you that when you install the SAP system, you had to specify a key phrase. Well, this is where the key phrase ends up being persisted. This is not a plain text file. If you know how to decrypt this, if you don't know, let me know. I can give you a hand. I'm going to show you here. This is going to be our secure storage opener. And for that, you will need a very powerful key on a very powerful super new algorithm called SOAR. You will need this key to decrypt the secure storage. How we got this? Again, it was hard-coded in the application that SAP uses to manage the secure store. Once you have everything, you just run the secure storage, and automatically you get the entire JDBC connection chain, as you can see, with the username and the password for the SAP database, and you get also the administrator password. So you get two very, very powerful passwords here. Let's see what we can do once we fully compromise the Java system and we want to do with this, we want to continue with this lateral movement. First, you need to protect the access to the secure storage if you want to apply some good countermeasures. Only the SAP administrator users and, of course, the local owners of that box should have access to that. What is more important, and we're going to see next, the password for the database user and the password for the SAP administrator users had to be different. You see on even my level setup that I'm very paranoid, the passwords are different, but in the vast majority of the scenarios on the corporate world, they are completely the same. So we are here. We have full control over the Java box. Let's try to attack and move from the DMC to the ABAP system. What we can do? We're going to reutilize the credentials. If you are creating a worm, you will try to make things as simple as possible because you want to avoid complexity at all time. If you create something complex, the probabilities of that thing failing are way too high. So what we're going to do, we're just going to reutilize those master passwords or that master password or those credentials to brute force our way through all the rest of the SAP systems to see if that matches. We could have done something smarter and to show you, but I have to admit that I cheated myself. I thought it was very heavy to just release it and make it public. But another way, apart of reutilizing the password, a more smart way was what is called decrypting the JCO destinations. What is that? Well, the Java system, as you can see, needs to speak with the ABAP system. And the communication protocol that SAP uses is called RFC. It's totally proprietary. So SAP needed to create a wrapper to make the Java system to speak RFC with the ABAP system. For that, they created a JCO. It's just a wrapper. And they also created JCO destination. Basically, at some point, you had a connection hard-coded with username and password that grants you access to the ABAP system. And a smarter attacker and a smarter worm will choose decrypt those JCO destinations that try to guess what they are. They are in the Java database. And try to guess what encryption algorithm is using. Exactly the same as the encryption algorithm that is being used for the secure storage. If you are a little bit smart enough and if you are curious and now that you saw the key, you can easily implement the decryption yourself. But I thought it was way too heavy to show it here. And another easy way to try to choose two lateral movement, it will be through SSH, SMB, etc. Let me show you. This will be quite silly. What we're going to do, for this example, I changed it. Basically, it will be us connecting through SSH and executing scripts remotely. No big deal. I can quickly show you what the payload is going to be. It could be something silly. Here, what the attacker truly is going to do, if this is like ransomware, this will be your encryption routine. You could be like sending a binary and invoking that binary to encrypt everything in the file system, or you can do any infection technique that you might want. quickly, we are executing commands. Not a big deal. What is going to happen that is going to be very interesting is this, that we're going to use to tackle even the adjacent systems at the other side. What is this master password that I keep mentioning about? Well, by default, when you install an SAP system, at the installation time, SAP is going to ask you, A, do you want to set a password for each individual and critical account at the different layers, operating system, SAP layer, database layers, or you want to use the concept of a master password? Guess what option is by default? By default, the suggestion is to use the master password. If you choose to use the master password, all the most powerful users will share the same password at all the different layers. The substar, the DIG, the SAP database user, the SAP OS administrator, the interactive user, the SAP OS service user, they will all have the same shared password. And guess what happens? If you compromise one password, the malware will be able to successfully compromise pretty much everything else. You will be able to do the ransomware and trigger the ransomware there. But that's not the end. We told you that we wanted to compromise the adjacent network, right? Well, first, how we fix this? There will be, on each one of the SAP systems, there are many, many ways to go to the adjacent network. We're going just to see one that is the most flashy and new, but there are many ways to do it. One way will be abusing what is called the RFC destinations on the EBAP system. It's a technique that we have showcased in the past. It's very common and highly effective. Why? Because the destinations will contain hard-coded users and hard-coded passwords for the remote system. Most likely, not always you can get rid of that. What you need to do is to follow the less privileged approach in terms of the privileges of the user. Master password, you should never use the master password. You should assign a different password for each one of the SAP systems at every single layer of SAP. And finally, you need to review your your firewall strategy. Only make sure that the systems on the DMC have a valid business reason to jump directly to the adjacent network. So we are here, we're about to finish. We want to start pushing our code. We're going to try the master password directly on the adjacent network, but we want to attack the clients, the end customer. What is going to happen, and again, just to make it more flashy, I'm going to attack the ICM, the web application server, invoking a program invoking a web application called SOAP RFC. Through SOAP RFC, you will be able to invoke remote function calls. Most likely, if your network administrator is doing the things right, I will expect the port on the internal network, the ICM, to be filtered. Normally, what a serious worm will do is to attack directly the RFC port, the 3200, or XX being the instance number. That port, I guarantee, will not be filtered. But again, I'm downgrading the attacks a little bit because I don't want you guys to break stuff using my name, at least. What we're going to do, we're going to send a SOAP request to the adjacent network, to the SAP systems on the adjacent network, and we are going to force a pop-up to the end customer. Basically, what the clients are going to see is an error message from the SAP GUI saying, hey, something went wrong. So if you want to update and avoid this error, you have to update your add-on, otherwise you will be harming our financial information. Here is the URL from where you need to download the patch. And of course, you will be controlling that URL and distributing your malware. Look at how the message looks like. This is the payload for you to see. You will have to figure out the URL. It's not that hard. Ah, don't tell me that it changed the MP. Demo gods. Well, it says that a preventive man is worth twice. So I made a video, quick video, so you see the pop-up. Sorry about that. That's the payload. That's the URL that we're attacking. Of course, here, what we're going to do is reutilizing the credentials, and we're bashing all those credentials everywhere. And that is the error message that the end customers are going to use. Basically, they're going to say, hey, something is wrong with your system. Please download the new patch from acme.com/evil. Okay, wrapping up because we are running out of time. What you can do, apart of all these countermeasures that we have seen, to avoid this type of risk. First of all, before we start tackling the technical part, ask yourself, do you really need to expose your SAP system directly to the internet? Does it really need to be directly exposed? Can people choose VPN in, or can you put like some sort of Citrix solutions in front of it? So can I have to implement a two-step authentication to get the SAP system? If you had to, by any reason, you had to expose this directly to the internet, try to put something that is called the Web Dispatcher, that is a free utility that SAP gives you, or, at this case, as we are dealing with web protocols, try your web application firewall, for example. If you're going to expose the SAP system directly to the internet, patch is critical. Follow the second Tuesday of each month. SAP is doing a good job on patching and releasing patches for all the security vulnerabilities, and they even actually give you the criticity of those patches. So follow that patch. Audit trails. In Java, they come enabled by default, but they do not come enabled in ABAP. You have to go there and enable them by hand. They will pay off in the future. You have to do it. Make sure, and this is a very controversial point, not because the SOC guys do not want to be SAP aware, but make sure that your SOC team is SAP aware, and prevent. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And if you have questions, I will be more than happy to take them. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here. So if anyone has any questions, I can give you the mic. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to ask a question about the slide before this, making the SOC aware about your SAP system. Do you have any recommendation about the logging policy that you need to make in SAP? And where we can find the interesting logs, especially for the script related to the GUI, because I'm thinking about some attacks related to the integrity of the informations. Thank you.
Okay. Just one question before you leave the mic. When you say like login policy, to what in particular are you referring? Like a password policy or something else?
No, like for example, if you have system in Windows, you have some logging policy, activate audit for failure, success, something like that. Or in network equipment, you put it in warning level, debug level, etc. And each time you don't have the same level of verbosity of the information.
I think I get you now. Most of these attacks that we haven't seen so far, they're not at the operating system layer. They are more at the application layer of the SAP NetWeaver. So for the OS point of view, it will not get any impact or like any connection towards it. Maybe if that person, as the silly example that I was showing before, is utilizing like SSH or SMB, well, yes, the OS and the regular OS security hygiene will take place. But in general, someone smart and someone that wants to do the true worm will try to avoid as much as possible touching the operating system. It will always be 100% SAP. And what you can do with the scripts, there is a secure guide. It's not the most complete guide in the universe, but there is like an SAP security guide for NetWeaver ABAP. You Google that literal search string and you will get like a PDF with some recommendations. Again, it's not the most complete at all, but at least it will give you like the first step so you can get started and get to know more about the SAP configurations. I think they do cover the SAP GUI script part.
Okay, but at the application level, you don't have some parameter to tune about the logging? at the SAP level.
At the SAP level?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Depending on the stack that you are, for example, if you're in ABAP, the most important one will be what is called the security audit log. This is the exact name that SAP gives you. By default, you will have to enable them, and you will have to restart the SAP system to actually start to get it enabled. When you do your research, make sure that you go for what is called the static parameter, because you have two, dynamic and static. And after you do that, and here is the complexity of SAP, that security audit trail, but by no means is not perfect. You can bypass it. There is like 1,000 techniques for that, but hey, something is better than nothing. A part of the security audit log, the thing with SAP is that it implements a lot of different services, right? In the different protocols and different ports. Most of those services, they also have their own audit trail that they do not come by default. If you want some that you want to take note, the gateway log, definitely you want that. The mesh server log, definitely you want that as well. You're welcome.
Anyone else? We still have 5 minutes, so. Okay. Thank you, Jordan, then, and enjoy your meal, guys.